Is it okay without the mic? Yeah, I hate mics. So I'm going to do it without the mic. I also hate being on stage. I'm short, but if I jump down into the audience, can you guys still see me? Cool. It also gives me easier access to my beer. So I'm thrilled to be here, and I want to thank VSP for sponsoring the event. VSP has been a huge part of my practice, and you'll see, I'll go through it, but it's been instrumental in building a private practice. You know, when I opened up cold, there wasn't a whole lot that I knew about marketing, and one of the things that kept me afloat in those initial months is actually having VSP patients, because it's just such a pervasive thing today. So someone's got to try this out for me. Who's got a QR scanner on their phone? Somebody break out their phone right now. Let's see if we can get this to work. All right. Anybody?
I got you.
You got me? All right. I'll try it too. Does it work from the back? I was working on a lecture today about marketing and optometry, and I was utilizing new technology or mobile technology. And I don't think anyone's ever done it like this before, so let's see if we can get it to work.
It works.
It works. Perfect. So this is great. Anybody else get it to work? We got it confirmed on, what do you use, an iPhone?
HTC.
HTC, so we got Android. Who's got an iPhone that can get it to work? Anybody?
Ooh.
No, it doesn't work on the iPhone?
Not this app at least.
All right, well, if you want to get a hold of me, the contact information, if you can't scan it with that QR code, it's just Dr. Bazan at visionsource.com. I'm always down to answer any kind of questions, so whatever you guys want to know, if you're shy and don't want to ask the questions here, just shoot me an email and we'll make sure to get that information to you. All right, so what I'm going to do today is just walk you through kind of my whole journey, from being a student, from going into commercial, from getting fired to starting my own practice to doing things in the industry. I'm just going to talk you through it. You know, I was in your position, and if I heard some of the stuff that I'm going to tell you guys about today, it would have definitely helped my journey along the way. So, we'll go way back. I grew up in a pretty depressed area called Utica, New York, central New York. It's part of the Rust Belt. The Rust Belt is called that because there's no industry there anymore. We have old factories that are abandoned, and all the industry has since gone elsewhere. So I got the hell out of there as quick as I could. So upon graduating high school, I was looking at Florida, California, I was looking at Hawaii. I ended up going to Trinity University in Texas. So I got as far away as I could to see a little bit different perspective on life. And that's when I first started to shadow healthcare practitioners. You guys probably all did the same stuff too. You don't know what you wanted to do. You wanted to be a doctor, so you started hanging out with some doctors. Most of the doctors that I shadowed or observed or hung out with were kind of dissatisfied with the state of things, but the optometrists that I hung out with were loving it. You know, they were private practitioners. There were some in commercial, but everybody seemed to have a pretty upbeat perspective on life and a good outlook on the profession. And it's something that really clicked with me. And that's probably how a lot of you guys find yourself in this position right now. So that was back in the mid-90s. Then, when I graduated college, because Texas didn't want a Yankee optometry school student, which they were very clear on, I ended up back in New York. And from 2000 to 2004, I was at SUNY. And SUNY actually, I was lucky enough to be the first class to go through the whole new building. So I got a wonderful facility and a great education through SUNY. This is our actual classroom, and I'm never in any of these pictures because every time they took the picture, they would always cut out the back row. I was the AV guy, so I had a legit reason to be in the back. I had to oversee everything. But I realized that my whole personality is kind of a back row guy. I like to kind of watch it and observe everything. I don't like to be in the front row because then you have to pay attention to every little detail. And one of the things as a business owner that I found is if I overwhelm myself with every little detail, it drives you crazy. The amount of stuff you have to know and the amount of micromanaging that you do in a small business, you can't handle it all. You know, you have to learn how to be somebody who can sit in class and determine, is this something I need to pass the boards? Is this something that I need to pass the test? Is this something that's going to help me in my future as part of being essential in my career? And I think in the back row mentality, you kind of tune in and out, and you get a very good feel for what's important and what's not. And that kind of, characteristic has helped me tremendously, transitioning from a student to a business owner. So you guys who sit in the back row now and you pay attention half the time, hopefully you're learning the skill how to pay attention to the right things, because it becomes extremely important in running your own business. All right, so that's the point. I'm in class. It was great identifying what I needed and what was applicable and what wasn't. All right, they say that A students make great professors and C students make millions. So, with that said, I don't want you guys to be overly whelmed with making sure you're always getting an A. An A doesn't count for much in the real world. You need to learn how to learn what's important and what you're going to actually use. So every time you're sitting there studying, make sure you realize how it's going to affect you in the long term. If it's some lame bullshit about, you know, the virtual image in a pool of Jell-O, and you're like, dude, what are you making me learn this for? You know, tune it out. It's okay. I used to skip test questions all the time. But if it's something that showed up on the boards, I'd pay more close attention to it. Don't be afraid to call your professors out either. They used to hate it when I did ask a question because it was always like, why do I need to know this? Question them. Just because they got you know, they're your professors doesn't mean that they're always telling you what you guys need to know for what you want to do. So question them. I definitely have a couple regrets, and a lot of them was trying to be a pro gamer. Wasn't intentional, but I'd find myself playing a lot of video games, watching a lot of Sports Center. In fact, I had a TV just for Sports Center, and then a TV to play NBA 2K. And that wasted a lot of my time. Nowadays, I still watch sports, right? Go Giants. Anybody? Probably not down here. Oh my God, you guys are good luck. But nowadays what I do is I realize when I'm doing an activity that's considered a time waster that doesn't help me build what I want to achieve in my career, in my profession, in my business, I'll sit there with something that supplements it. So if there's a break in the action, if there's a commercial, I'll have you know, the latest article from Optometric Management sitting right there, and I'll just rip through that. So you gotta, I mean, it's okay to do stuff that you love to do, but also kind of put it through the perspective of, man, maybe I can pick up a couple things during this commercial break. So I got really good at taking time-wasting activities, eliminating most of them, and focusing more on what would help me in the future of where I wanted to be. And one of those things is just making better use of my time. So time is the most valuable thing a man can spend. How much is your time worth? You know, you can put a dollar amount on things. You know, people have certain salaries in mind, but they don't even realize how valuable every moment they spend is. I found this statistic pretty eye-opening, and if I wanted to make, you know, $250,000 a year, every $125 for every money hour. So that's about $2 a minute. So during that 4-minute commercial break, that's several dollars spent that I could have been earning in potential revenue. All right. Can I borrow a dollar? I remember being a student too, and this is something that I still learned a lot of lessons. It wasn't until optometry school that I kind of really knew the value of a dollar. In college, I had like a meal plan. Beers were cheap living at a college school, but when I was in New York City, they gave me a $2,000 check and they said make it last. And I'm like, my rent's $1,000. How's this gonna happen? So I had to really figure out how to drink cheap beer and eat a lot of ramen. And believe it or not, those skills come in very important. So learning how to live on a fixed income is something that you're going to really need to learn how to do well, because it's very applicable to real life business. You know, a lot of small businesses fail because they don't know how to handle cash flow. They don't know how to budget. They don't know how to set up a game plan for the funds that they have. You know, you have a few good months, and all of a sudden you have 2-3 months where you're not making that same level of income, and you find yourself filing for a line of credit, bankruptcy, not paying your bills on time. So you have to keep that kind of broke college kid mentality throughout your life. So if you're developing that broke college kid mentality now, that's a good thing. Keep it with you. You know, so cash flow will kill a business. You have to have budgeting skills because it's essential to prevent your business from going into the ground. So keep your skills, guys. Do what you're told. This was something that I had probably some of the biggest issues with. I'm pretty opinionated, and when something isn't the way I want it done, I usually say something. But in school, you guys are learning the basics. What your professors are teaching you clinically is sound. So you got to get the clinical stuff down, you got to get the basics, but don't lose sight of the way you wanted to do things. I used to fail refractions all the time because the way they taught it didn't make sense to me. but I had to learn it to pass the test. The way that I do refractions now is a little bit different, and I think it's better and it works better in my office. But in school, make sure you're learning the good foundational stuff. So the way that it applies to business is that you need to recognize there's certain things that should always be done as a foundation, but you have to be able to kind of adjust on the fly. If something doesn't go as planned, you have to go into your toolbox and pull out the tools to fix it. So those are the skills you can learn in optometry school, and then take those into the real world with you as a business owner. All right, all-nighters. Now, last time I did this talk, kids don't pull all-nighters anymore. At least that's what they did in SUNY. They're like, we study every day. We don't have to cram. Do you guys pull all-nighters here? Yeah. Okay, good. SUNY's just weird then. Back when I was at SUNY, we used to pull all-nighters, but apparently now they study a little every day. I was so shocked to hear that. We used to cram. You know, all-nighters were important. Why are all-nighters? You're looking at me like, what is that? So big deal, all-nighters. All-nighters are important because if you think running a small business is a 9 to 5, you're in for a big surprise. There's a lot of nights that I'd leave the office, I don't know, 2 o'clock in the morning. There's several nights that I've spent the whole night in the office. You know, you gotta be prepared to suck it up and just get it done. You know, if you're running your business, you're running the business. You need to be there to put in the hours. So when you're evaluating yourself and you're saying, do I have what it takes to run a small business? Being able to pull an all-nighter is essential. Now, maybe it's only essential for the first year or so, but it's a characteristic that most successful business owners have and that are willing to make sacrifices, and that's sleep is one of them. Look the part. Who likes their clinic coat? I hated that thing. I used to get written up all the time. I walked in there with actually a long doctor's coat the first day of clinic, and they threw me out. I hated that stupid little white jacket. I don't know. It just wasn't for me. But while I was in clinic, I guess I had to adapt. The point that I'm trying to make with this is we have to, you know, people judge a book by its cover. And if you want to operate in the realm of business professionals, that clinic coat really doesn't cut it. In my office, people make more of a connection with me if I have, even if I just have a suit on, no tie, just kind of casual look. I have had more business owners respond to that level of dress than a clinic coat or a white coat or a doctor's coat. You know, a doctor's coat's good for allowing people to understand their prescription and maybe take your treatment more seriously, but it's not as great if you're trying to build business and establish connections in a professional industry. So it's not for everybody, but I would consider your appearance and how you dress is crucial into building a business. I think most of the business owners that I know would be pretty weirded out if I showed up to business meetings wearing my clinic attire. So just keep that in mind. I think that building a business in a suit is one of my keys to success. You guys are quiet. Does anybody have questions so far? Usually people heckle me, so this is weird. No one's heckling me. Anybody?
What should girls wear?
What do girls wear that's professional? What do you think?
Yeah, like a pencil skirt, and a down shirt. I get your point.
Yeah. I'm pretty sure. I mean, you don't have to go like Antella Loft, whatever, but you can find something cute too. All right. Are you guys first, second, third years? Who's the first year? Who's the second year? Who's the third year? Okay, wow. Third years, you guys are doing what, hour-and-a-half exams now? Give or take? Second years who are doing exams are doing like 3-hour exams, right? You're not doing them? The second year you don't do them?
Summer.
Summer? Okay. Wow, then I'm impressed with you third years. Good job. And SUNY, because we had all the VT stuff, our exams would take like 3 hours. It was ridiculous. Can you imagine if somebody came into my office and sat there for 3 hours? That doesn't exist in the real world. The point with this is you're doing everything with that 3-hour exam because you have to practice and you have to get good at it. You can't do everything and you can't practice every single skill you've ever learned on every single patient. You have to know why the patient's there, what their needs are, what their problem is, and the quickest way to find the best resolution. And that skill is super important not only for patient care, but it's super important for how you handle your business. When you come up with, when you're faced with a problem in the business, you have to find quick ways to fix it the best possible you can. And getting good at that now is something you guys should all be aware of. So when you're doing your exams in school, go through the motions, do everything, but think to yourself, is this a test that I would do if this was a real world? And that's one of the easiest questions you could ask yourself. If I had to do this in my office, is this something that I would need to do? Is the data that I'm gathering from this test really going to make a difference in the outcome of this patient's treatment? And I think that's one of the questions that, at least in my clinic, they failed to teach us that mentality. And I came out of school thinking I had to do everything on every patient when that would absolutely be the wrong thing to do. So try to get that mentality of, is this needed to achieve the best possible outcome? All right, so besides wasting all that time, one of the biggest regrets is I didn't market. I mean, you got kids in your class that probably have their own business cards, right? Anybody have their own business cards now? You know, I wasn't that guy. I really didn't make any kind of connection with patients or people. I showed up to the clinic, did what I had to do, and I left. And that was a big regret, because the marketing skills that you can practice in school are really not that much different from the marketing skills that you're going to need to do in your office to be successful. You can start simply by just having a Facebook page, right? This doesn't have to be your personal profile. This can be just a business page that's, you know, it's intern Bazan, right? And if people wanted to keep track of you or stay in touch with you, or you wanted that person to follow you once you entered into private practice, this is an easy point of connection. You know, go ahead, get your business cards. Go ahead and let them know. Start writing a blog. If blogging was around when I was in school, I would add a blog, and I would add a way for people to keep connected to me. So don't be afraid to start marketing yourself as a doctor and as a business early on in school. It took me a while to figure that out, but I would do that nowadays. Okay, why do you have to wait until you have your own own office to start marketing? There really isn't a reason. Start now. Okay, so you graduate. Then what? I really didn't have a game plan, so what I did, I just looked at the help wanted ads. Does Nova have a help wanted ad section on their website? You guys have job listings? So this is what I did. And I went through each of these listings and I said, all right, who's going to pay me the most amount of money? And, you know, I ended up on one of these that happened to be Cullen's Fashion Optical. So I ended up going into commercial for one reason, and it's because it paid the most. Now, this is where I did have a game plan, but every time I mention this game plan, people seem to laugh, so I don't think they take it seriously, but it was serious. I wanted to make the most money and spend all of it for 5 years. So going from a $2,000 a semester check to a $2,000 week paycheck was what I wanted. And living in Manhattan, being a single guy, it was nice to be able to take my friends out to dinner, to drinks, and I needed the income to do that. And plus I wanted a nice apartment too. So I took the job that paid the most, and that ended up at a commercial location. That was really the only thought process behind it, and I had a hell of a time doing it. It was great for what it was worth. So the checks were big. You know, it's a huge difference going from trying to stretch yourself on ramen noodles to eating at a 5-star restaurant. I adjusted very quickly though. So you got to be cautious. You can't really go blow $172,000 in one night. So you always have to keep yourself grounded. Yeah. That was last time me and Coleman were in Vegas, actually. No, but you really have to keep that mentality of the cheap, you know, Miller High Life and ramen. You can't go crazy unless you had that game plan. I knew that I was pretty disciplined and I could pull it off, but my friends get into this lifestyle and now they're trapped. You guys ever heard of golden handcuffs? I didn't know it was until my friend tried to start his own business, and with his apartment that he bought, with his expensive taste girlfriend, with his car payments, with everything else that he had going on, he couldn't make sacrifices in the way his lifestyle was and his income. So he couldn't pull it off because he didn't know how to pull it back down to ramen and Miller High Life. I did, luckily, and in celebration of that, I have a Miller High Life right here. Commercial is one of the most surprising aspects of it. Is you're going to get an absolutely wonderful foundation if you take advantage of it. Being in a commercial setting, you have a lot going on. You have a whole team of corporate business, MBA, and marketing wizards, and a lot of knowledge out there for you. You just have to know how to get it, and grab it, and learn it. So the opportunities that I had working in a commercial establishment So I had a chance to learn it all. Sales, optical, merchandising, management. And what does that mean? That means when I wasn't seeing patients, I wasn't reading, Game of Thrones in the exam room. I was out on the floor doing sales. I was hanging out with Bev, who used to merchandise the store. I figured out how to do that. I saw what the managers were up to. I learned how to handle people. I saw customer service. I learned how to settle disputes. If you're there, don't just be there to see patients. Be there to take it all in. I became a manager. At one point, my day was insane. I'd go from 8 to 2 at 50th and 3rd, and then I'd shout over to the west side, 76 and Broadway, from 2 to 8. And I'd manage 2 locations, see patients in 2 locations, and be there pretty much 6 days a week. So I stepped up to that position because I realized the value in that, and I saw how that knowledge that I was learning would take me further in my career. Network. So some of the people that I'm going to call upon in the future are some of the people that I kind of cut my teeth with in the industry. So you have a favorite optician, so you have a favorite manager, so you have somebody that's exceptional in sales. Don't break those connections just because you get fired from the job, or move on from the job. You want to make sure that you're networking while you're there and learning how to revolve around the industry and navigate your way through the industry, because you can't survive on your own. You need to have connections in the industry, and those connections are your friends who will help you along the way. So one of the things that I think separates somebody who just kind of has an employee mentality from somebody who's going to be a future business owner is they work like they own it. Where's Graham? I know Graham's going through this right now. Graham's bouncing around a couple different commercial locations, and one of the things he finds frustrating is that he wants to work like he owns it, but he doesn't know exactly how he can do that in some of the practices that he's at, and it's frustrating. What I told Graham is you just have to do it. Just pretend like you're the owner. Even if the effort doesn't pay off, it'll pay off in the long run for the practice that you put in doing it. So work like you own it. Okay, so I went from showing up, collecting a check, thinking it was just a job, to a learning experience. And that was the first time I thought about optometry as more than just a 9 to 5. I thought about it as a profession. I still wasn't completely at the business owner mentality, but at least now I knew there was a little bit more to it than just showing up and working. Hard work often leads to success. No work seldom does. Just don't be the doc who spins the dials and then goes home. If this is your career, treat it like one. If this is your job, all right, then you get a pass on that. But I don't think any of you guys are really here just to have a job. Kick your own ass. I don't know how to, that's it. You just have to be the person to motivate yourself. I mean, maybe you'll have quotas to meet, maybe you'll have feedback from patients, maybe your boss will give you a progress report, but nobody's going to do anything other than yourself when it really comes down to it. You have to find the internal motivation to do it. Be a sponge. Seriously, you're going to be in this environment, opportunity all around, soak it all up. Okay? The business education that I got was basically just because I picked up stuff as I went along. So what did I learn from Cohen's? I learned how to calculate and pay attention to cost of goods. You guys have practice management classes, but they probably never mentioned cost of goods, right? I know mine really didn't. Who's gone through practice management classes yet?
Just started.
Just started? All right. Make sure they spend at least a full day going over cost of goods. It's one of those things where as a consumer you have no clue, but as a business owner it's essential. So you got to figure out how to get the best price and sell it as the highest return and have a product that actually moves, whether it's actually a product or service. Take any sales training that they give you. So the sales training can come from you shadowing the best salesperson there. It can come from some seminar they send you to. It can come from a webinar. I used to buy books and then just have them reimburse me for it. No one's going to argue against spending money on you if you can demonstrate a return. I used to be crazy about every 6 months I try to get a raise, and it worked most of the time. But I didn't go about it in a way that they're like, that's great, let's just talk about this in a few weeks. I went there with a 10 to 15 page document establishing what I did in the last 6 month period with real numbers, and real numbers to people in the business side of things are how much money you're making them. If you can establish that a couple of things you learn from those books translated into a profit, then they'll have no problems giving you further education and reimbursing you for what time you put in. Now, timing's everything. I had some bad months, right? You don't want to present the latest findings and apply for a raise when you're on a little slump there. You want to hit them at the high note when they're calling you and saying what a great job you're doing. So if you hear that from your employee, when they're praising you is a great time to hit them up with a value proposition about increase in pay or extra duties. Okay, begin to optimize your contact lens sales. One of the things that drive me crazy is all the doctors that I work for had their own prescribing habits, and everybody was all across the boards with brands, when there's actually a lot of similarities between brands, right? Sci-Highs perform like Sci-Highs. There isn't necessarily a huge difference among them. So playing back into the cost of good things, I'd look and I'd say, damn, we get this box for $12 and we sell it for $32, or we get this box for $28 and sell it for $31. That didn't make sense to me, and I was like, as a big company with 140 locations, you guys are losing on tons of money. We need to establish certain protocols, and when all things are clinically equivalent, we should have preferred brands. And that was something that I might have helped that company make tons of money on, and you just have to be aware of these things because that absolutely has a bottom line effect in your business. We do a lot of contacts in my office. Yeah.
I was just going to ask, in your practice, how much, when it comes to scratch-resistant lenses or coatings and transit, I mean, how these options where there's a lot of profit margin, how much prescribing do you do from the chair instead of just handing it off to your optician?
Well, I think the handoff is super important and critical. So I think prescribing in the chair and handing off is what actually drives the best results. So if you're sitting there talking to patients, you want to talk to them like UV. They could have a CR39 or they could have poly. As I'm doing the exam, I'll point out a picture. I take fundus pictures on everybody. I say, this is your area of central vision called the macula. 50, 60 years of UV beating down on this area can cause damage. When we go out there and talk about glasses, you got to make sure you have polycarbonate so it's filtering out all this UV radiation which damages that area. You don't want to lose your vision because of that. When we hand off to the optician, we tell them, we talked about UV in the exam room, make sure she's covered out here. This is the frame and lens expert. Megan will take you from here. So it's that whole from education to in the chair selling to handing off to the optician who's the expert that will reinforce it is what really helps get our AR coatings up to 99%. It's just what we do in our office. There's no 50% we're working on it. It's that everybody has it. If they don't have it, I want to know why. So like for AR, for example, I think the best excuse that I ever heard, and I gave somebody a pass on it, was this old chick that had a lot of crow's feet, and she's like, why would I want somebody to see my eyes? I'm trying to block them. Throw the glare on the lenses. I don't want non-glare. So she got a pass. Conference calls are a big pain in the question in the back.
Sorry, back to the contacts. You said you do a lot of contacts in your office?
Yeah.
What would make a customer buy contacts from you versus possible 1-800 contacts? What would you say to that?
Well, there's a couple things you can say. One of them is if they want to maximize their VSP benefits, you just put it together as a package. So at the handoff, I'll say to the person selling the contacts, Joe's approved, for an annual supply of contacts. I already put that mentality in that he just had an exam, his eyes are healthy enough to sustain contacts for the next year. He's cleared to get that annual supply of contacts. Not a year supply, but an annual supply, meaning that he needs to get it every year. At that point, which is the handoff, that person will say, great news, Joe. Doc authorized you for a whole year of these things. They're on sale if you get the year, so I'll knock 10% off. And after your $50 rebate, it's only $200. How about we ship these to your office or home? It's free. Don't worry. You got the year supply. Done. So people, if you get into that routine and that script, it just becomes habit, and there really isn't any issues with the whole annual supply. Anybody else about contacts? It's a big area. Yeah.
I actually have a question about, you said you sell UV or poly through telling me about UV.
Yeah.
How do you sell sunglasses then? You said they
Yes, but a lot of people who are wearing glasses will not really have sunglasses. They just wear their glasses. contact lens wearers, you can adjust what you're telling them. But I think everybody should have sunglasses too. But I want to get them their primary thing that's in front of their eyes the most to make sure that that's doing the most protection. What else? Graham.
I think it'd be good for the students to hear, how do you handle multifocals?
How do I handle multifocals?
How do you sell them?
Well, this is advanced business knowledge, but if you have a big menu of multifocals, your opticians are going to screw it up every time, and they're not going to prescribe the ones that make you the most money. I eliminated all the options basically except one type, and that's the one type that we use. Patients don't know what the hell the difference is between 10 different multifocals. So go with the one that works the best, that earns you the most money, and that helps the patients. It's easy. There's a lot of them that do it, but not all of them are as profitable as you may want them to be. So in that case, my opticians only really have one option, and the patient doesn't know anything else. And as long as the lens performs, everybody's happy. Good question. All right, we'll move on. Conference calls. I used to hate them until I realized that it's an opportunity to learn a lot. Conference calls are run by pretty smart people. Hopefully the people that are running the conference calls are really passionate about their position and what knowledge they're bringing to you. You know, it was the big thing where we had a conference call in the morning, we'd put it on speakerphone and then put it on mute and then do the opening procedures or check in contacts or do something where we didn't pay attention to it until they say your name, and then you're like, oh shit. And then, what did you say? I didn't hear that last part. And then you had to catch up. By the end of my time working for Cohen's, I started to be that annoying guy on the conference call and start to ask questions. I used to hate the people that did that at school, but I turned out to be one of these people on the conference calls that would really ask questions. Because they're trying to tell you stuff that improves the profitability of the company. That's what a conference call is. It's to improve efficiency and to make more money. So think of it as future training for your business, and pay attention to what's covered on conference calls. They're not meant to waste people's time. Projections. This was also something that I had no clue about. They don't teach this in any practice management optometric course that I've been in, but projections are extremely important. We have daily projections, we have monthly projections, I have a yearly projection, but it's a proven fact that if you keep track of numbers, they tend to go up. So the closer you pay attention to something, it's kind of like The Secret, right? You put it in your subconscious and it's always there and you're always working at it. But you start tracking numbers, even if it's daily sales, monthly sales, actually do daily, weekly, monthly, they tend to go up. So you're going to see your progress. It's also a great point when you can present to your employer, the last 6 months and you're up, you know, every month 5% over last year. And they see how much you're making a difference, you can get more money out of it. I was up, in the 4 years that I worked for this company, I started at a certain base and I was up dramatically over that because I established the value with statistics and projections. Actually, I guess the statistic I'm most proud of is, after 1 year, both of those offices that I was managing doubled their numbers. And they were offices that were problem offices that they really couldn't find a solution for until I went in there and took care of business. So my mentality changed. I didn't Flintstone it. Anybody watch the Flintstones? They're putting it back on Cartoon Network, so catch it if you can. In the intro, they blow the whistle and Fred takes off, right? That's Flintstoning. If you're a 9 to 5 and at 4:59 you're waiting for that clock to change and then you're out the door, that's Flintstoning. Don't be a Flintstoner. Put in a little bit more extra effort, extra work, it'll pay off in the long run. All right, so that extra effort in my case was a blog. I started to develop a patient blog basically because when you work commercial, you get 10 minutes for an exam, and just my summary would take 10 minutes. So information that I couldn't deliver in the exam itself, I used to give these guys a link to my blog and say, in the search term box, put this search in and you'll find the information. That was unbelievable, and that's when I started to really care about patients. It's weird to say that, but until then, they were just kind of a set of eyeballs that I was taking care of and they're out the door. But going deeper and developing a sense of patient care in a commercial establishment isn't a great idea, and I'll tell you why in a second. By providing this blog, I was giving them a direct contact to me, and I was building up my popularity and my brand. They weren't coming into Cohen's because it was Cohen's. They were coming there because I was the doctor at that location. that really got me labeled as kind of like the Pied Piper, and patients were coming there for me. That got me what I thought was going to be a promotion. You know, I had this such strong bond with my patients. The numbers were doubled. I had a meeting scheduled with the CEO of the company, and then at that meeting I had my 10-page paper about how I wanted to be, you know, start the whole company-wide blog, and how I wanted to take on more management at a better location, and I put in for a raise. But that meeting didn't turn out so great. Basically, at that meeting, he's like, "You're crazy." He's like, "You're branding yourself and not branding the company. It's either the blog goes or you go." And at that meeting where I thought I was going to get promoted, a raise, maybe an award, a building in my honor, I got fired. So he told me to pack my stuff up and get out at the end of the day. It was one of those things that it kind of takes the wind out of you a little bit, but it ultimately worked out for the best. So I got fired. What did I do? Back to the help wanted. So this time around, though, I didn't necessarily want the highest paying job. I wanted the most flavor of experiences. I didn't know what the hell I really wanted to do. I did know I wanted to go into business, but I didn't know what modality or where I wanted to practice. So I just started to work everywhere. I even worked like in Staten Island, which nobody wants to work. So I started bouncing around New York City. I was just doing random fill-ins. I learned a lot about things that I wanted to incorporate into my practice, but quite honestly, I learned a lot more about things that I didn't want to incorporate into my practice. There's a lot of pretty crappy practices out there, and that's the good news. Those crappy practices have been around for like 20 years, and you're like, wow, if this guy can do it, I can do it too. So it was inspiring and disappointing and a learning experience all at the same time. Then I found this guy. So Dan, who owns Brooklyn Eyeworks, he had the same template on his blog as I did for my WordPress blog, and I was like, it's got to be a sign. So I'm a very honest and upfront dude, and when I talk to Danny, I'm like, Danny, you're in Park Slope on 15th Street and 5th. I'm looking at locations about 10 to 15 blocks away, so I totally understand if you don't want me to work here because I'll probably be taken from your patient base. And to my surprise, he's like, well, I don't know. You gave a hell of an interview. I think you'll be good for the business. Who knows where the future will lead us? And he was the only person that was cool enough to do that. You tell somebody you're thinking about opening up a private practice, they're like, nah, you're competition. I don't want you working here. And that's what I heard a lot of times. It was Danny was the first person to embrace the fact that I wanted to have my own business, and he kind of is my mentor. So I owe a lot to Danny. He also gave me a vacation after working there for like a month. So I started in like October, and then in Thanksgiving, I found myself sitting on a beach in Hawaii for a week. It was this little lounge chair right here that I was reading a book, and it changed the way that I thought about business. That book was The E-Myth. Has anyone read this book yet? Graham, you read it? It's a good book, right? Okay, you guys have a profession of optometry. That doesn't qualify you to be a business owner. Just because you have a skill set of optometrist doesn't mean you necessarily have the skill set of business owner. And we can say that we're optometrists and we're going to open up a business, but it doesn't really register until you have somebody point the fact out that you need a completely different set of skills to actually be a business owner. And it was this book that kind of made the most sense to me, and it was that point in time where I was like, damn, there is a huge difference in the way I was thinking about business to the way I should be thinking about business, but it was inspiring. It was inspiring enough that I actually, let me go back. It was inspiring enough where while I was in Hawaii, I went to the business center, came up with a business, filed for articles of incorporation, and set up my business while I was on vacation in Hawaii. So it's one of those books where maybe I haven't come back to it all that much, but it was one of those turning points in my life. So after that, I realized that I didn't have crap for a business background, so I started to just study everything. I started to just take on immense amounts of business books, stuff that I didn't get in school. You know, I went and I looked at my practice management notes. It really didn't have any real value until I combined it with some of the other things. And I'll go through. I actually have a little section on here about books I want you guys to read. So I began to think of my business as something as a a prototype, a franchise model. I wanted it to function a little bit differently. I wanted it to be repeatable. I wanted it to be run by somebody who wasn't just me there. I wanted a culture, but I didn't want to necessarily have to be the crucial figurehead that was tied to my single office. And that's what the E-Myth helped me realize. The next thing it did is it kind of pointed me in the right direction on where to find some help. I talked to businesses and business owners that had businesses that I wanted to be like. So just find some people that you respect, find somebody who you say, wow, he did a great job at his business, and go after those guys and just talk to them. Call them up, take them to lunch, have a drink with them. Just talk to them so you know what it's all about. Score will match you up. If you can't find somebody, just go to Score and they'll hook you up. They hooked me up with a guy, what was his name? He's in Arizona. He's actually well known. Stephen Cohen in Phoenix, Scottsdale, Arizona. And these people that sign up for Score, they love to talk about their business and inspire people. And sometimes you do need a little bit of inspiration, and that's what Score was helpful for. SBA.gov pretty much will do everything you need it to do. One of the things that I pulled up specifically is entrepreneurship for you? Do you have what it takes? Do you possess these characteristics? It's definitely not for everybody, but the list here, if you can go through this list and be like, yes, that's me, that's me, that's me. I don't know about that, but I can see myself doing that. That's not me. And if you can go through the list that they put together, from my own experience, if you hit those characteristics, you'll be just fine in business. So it's kind of like a personality evaluation. The other thing is I didn't really know what to do after I had my business formed, I had my entity formed, and SBA.gov will actually walk you through it. It's simple. Starting a business is simple. Running the business is the hard part. So there's basically 4 steps. Start your business plan, you get a little bit of assistance, pick a location, and then get money. That's it. And it really is that simple of a step. Anybody have any questions? Because usually there, people are like, oh my God, I thought it was so hard. It's really not hard to start a business. Anybody? Who's starting a business here?
I had a question.
Sure.
How long was the process after you realized you wanted to start your business and actually went through everything, and then your door opened?
So that was November, and I opened in July. Yeah, so 6 months, give or take, end of November. It's quick. It could have been quicker. I just trouble finding the right location, but it's super quick. I mean, I can set up a business this weekend if you want. Just finding a location and getting everything in place is what takes a little longer. Graham?
Yeah, I was going to say, I don't want to throw a monkey wrench in this, but don't most doctors get incorporated anyway? Because the minute you start working, especially as an independent contractor who goes in at offices, you are your own employee. So for tax reasons, for personal safety, certain advantages it gives you, you incorporate yourself. So me as an IC, my vehicle is the business vehicle, my gas goes on the business, account is tax-free. I have a ton of stuff I build for my business, and I'm nothing but a floater. So a lot of docs do get incorporated right off the bat.
This would be separate. So Graham's thing is, well, docs are businesses already because they incorporate. I didn't pay attention to that day of lecture, so when I was working, doing fill-ins, I was paying for gas myself. Graham's a lot smarter and paid attention a lot better than I did. But no, I think that's great. If you guys can write something off as to the business because you're incorporated, go for it. But when you're starting a business for your office, your business entity that you form may not necessarily be best served by IC. My business is a professional limited liability company, which allows me to work with other professions. You can go to that website and they list the definitions and you just pick the one that works and then run it by your either tax guy or your attorney if you have one. I had an attorney when I started, and honestly it was the biggest waste of $5,000 ever. So that's what it looks like for articles. You just insert your name of the company right there, you send it off to the state, and in 2 weeks you're a business. Easy to do. What are the other things you need? You need a tax ID number. You can do this online. I did it from the hotel room. You go to the irs.gov site, you click on file for your tax ID, apply online now, and within a day or so you have a legit tax ID number. Easy to do. The other thing you're going to need is your NPI number. You can't get an NPI number until you graduate. But MPI number is super important. Why is it important? Because you don't get paid by insurance companies unless you have this number. Again, it's not hard to do. You just have to know where to go to do it. And the NPPES website is it. The other thing that you need to get on insurance panels, which recently totally screwed me over, is the CAQH. It's a credentialing website. Instead of having to submit your credentials to every single insurance company around, one website will do that for most of them. So make sure that when you are applying to insurance panels like VSP, you're credentialed on the CAQH. But then VSP is also a pain in the ass because they send you a packet about this big in addition to this that you have to fill out too. Luckily, it's easy. All right, so unless you have the gift of gab, no one's going to give you money unless you show them how they're going to get their money back and that you're not a big risk. So you got to put together some kind of business plan. I went to Pirate Bay, downloaded Business Plan Pro, and set it through. It's not hard to get a business plan because everything's a template nowadays. Literally, the business plan that I first started with, I changed the name from American Eye Care to Park Slope Eye, and I used that as my original business plan to get money. What I didn't do was just leave that as my only business plan. As I got more and more involved in the business, I went back to this business plan, and it evolved and it changed and I updated it. Because I do think you need a roadmap to get you where you're going, and a business plan helps with that. You can't be the boat without a rudder, because who knows where you'll end up. All right, somebody needs to bankroll your project. So where do you go to get money? Things are a little different now. It was easy for me to get money. I had a lot of options and a lot of sources, and the insurance rates were good. For you guys, it's going to be a little bit harder. I think the business plan is going to be essential. I think you may want to talk to organizations who can help you get money. But for me, I went to a company called Matsko, basically talked to a guy named Jeff on the phone, even before I formally emailed him my business plan, and he's like, as long as you keep it to under $300,000, I'll send you a check. Just tell me roughly what you're going to use it for. So when I was applying for money back in 2008, it wasn't hard to do, but since things got a little rocky recently, and I've actually tried to start a second location, and I know funding's tougher, you guys may have a little bit more of an uphill battle. So where are you going to get your money? I have some broke-ass friends, so that wasn't a question. My family would probably give me the money, but who wants to deal with family? I could go for an SBA, but I need to come up with 20%, and since you guys know I blew it all working for Cones and living the fast life in the city, I didn't have any savings. So, the options are there. My options were limited, and I was lucky enough to find a company that specializes in startups for optometric practices. Optometry has a pretty low default rate and a pretty good track record of being able to pay stuff back. So I think that if you go with a specialized lender like a Wells Fargo or a couple of the other ones, that you would have good luck. Dana, VSP has programs too, right?
Yeah, we have basically a setup for first-time practice buyers through Vision 1 Credit Union, which is a credit union. It was started years ago by the California Optometric Association, but they only do optometric practices, optometric models. They can do them all over the country. We have $40 million of seed money in there
Wow.
that we have available for start to get practices going. It's not available for cold starts. You have to buy an existing practice.
Okay.
So they can look at the numbers and have a better idea of where it's going and what type of an investment it is. But great program for
That's Vision 1?
Vision 1 Credit Union.
Vision 1 Credit. If you guys are looking, and another way to go about this, I mean, I opened up cold, but if you can take a practice that's struggling for obvious reasons, like the doctor's an asshole, and you replace them with somebody who's nice, that practice will do better. Try to find those great buys, because apparently there's $40 million of money for you to do things like that. All right. One of the other things that I did before I got started was I went around and I talked to the top doctors in my area, and a guy who's got a $6 million cash practice told me one of the keys to his success was minimizing cost of goods and surrounding himself with individuals who are like-minded and becoming the best optometrists and building the best practices that they could. So groups like Vision Source or Gary Gerber's group or Al Kleinman's group, all those groups put you into touch with people who are determined to make their practices better. And when you have that mentality, the only thing that does happen is you do get better. All right, so you got to pick a location. That was probably the biggest hurdle to overcome. It's a big step setting something up and saying, I'm going to be here for a while. So of course you can do research online, and the real estate sites out there now are awesome. You can find everything out. There's so many different categories and statistics, but the demographic that I was looking for was young professionals, so I was able to narrow it down to about 4 different neighborhoods in Brooklyn. I knew lots of me, but I knew that I could be a little bit different and do something maybe just that would be more appealing to the young professionals than those guys were doing. So I opened up in an area that most people said not to. But it turned out to be a good move because I did my research. Then you got to just work with a real estate broker. So after you get your neighborhood locked down, man, I hate real estate brokers, even though a lot of them are friends. Real estate brokers, they're in it to make money too. So when they show you a location, every location that you've seen, they're going to be like, this is the best location for your business ever. Tune them out. Charlie Brown them. Want. You got to really sit there and look at the strengths and weaknesses of that location. I ended up in a location that most people that I talked to were like, don't do it. You're on the second, you're not on the ground level. I was on like a 1.5 level off the street, and like you have to be on the street for street traffic. I was on a side street. I wasn't a main street. So I'm on a side street, 1.5 levels up, at a place that even the real estate broker wasn't that crazy about. But I recognized the traffic patterns because I scouted out the area, and I saw how people commute. The R train stops at Union and 4th. People live on Union up the slope. Park Slope I is Union and 5th. So people that get off the subway don't go into the hood area. They come up into the neighborhood area and they walk right by my office. I threw a light projector sign on the ground, and I almost killed 3 people in the first day because they tripped over the light thinking it was something on the ground. So you have to be able to take a spot, look at it, and see how much it has for potential, independently of what anyone's telling you. Scenes or stuff, but I actually still get paper magazines, and I would cut out, like, you know, there would be a phoropter or an AR machine, or in this case, you guys probably have OCTs. And what I did is I sketched out, after I found my spot, I'd sketch out the floor dimensions. I'd do a quick layout of where it was, and then I would stick things on there. So at the time, my girlfriend thought I was crazy because I'd have just these little cutouts of magazines on flip charts, and I'd be going, every time I walked by it, I'd look at it, and I'd move stuff around, and I'd set it up. And it's weird to think that the stuff that I put on that flip chart is actually how the office is now. So just because I walk by this thing in the apartment all the time, and I got a chance in my mind to let that sink in and really analyze things, it helped tremendously. So the physical representation of what I had in my head manifested itself here on this flip chart. You guys use OneNote? I believe that's a program that's still around. Anybody use OneNote? OneNote's great because you can copy and paste stuff that you find online into basically like a journal entry. So I would go through and I'd have like a page that said optical. And then that optical, I'd copy and paste articles from 2020 magazine. I'd take pictures that I found of a frame line that I like, and I'd stick it in there. And that became the basis of how I planned the office. Then, because I did have all those magazines around, I used to have little folders. So I'd label the folder like front desk. I'd label the folder exam room. And then I would put all the crap that I wanted to cut out eventually, or make a part of my office into these folders. So I started to build the office before I even built the office. And then that all manifested itself in Park Slope I, and I opened up cold in the summer of 2008. You guys know what opening up cold means? It means you don't have nobody. Not even my mom was a patient. Like, there's nothing there. It was a jewelry shop before I went in there. So you sit there and you're like, how do I make this work? Well, there was a whole bunch of slides there, but I think I forgot them. So basically, I realized that being a business owner, I needed to do some things to increase the knowledge base that I had to make this business successful. What time is it? 6:30? What time are you guys supposed to be done with this? 7? I'll go through this next part pretty quickly. I'm going to highlight some stuff that I had to learn on my own, and it was through reading a lot of crap that I got to the really gold stuff. So I'm going to go through and I'm going to give you books that personally mean something to me still to this day, and I think if you read these books, you might get a lot out of it too. And these are the books that helped build my business. It wasn't anything that I really learned in optometry school. It was stuff that I had to seek out, acquire, attain, and apply on my own. So, let's go through it. All right. In school, you learn a lot about how to be a good eye doctor. Your practice management classes are probably weak on the following areas: personal development, professional development, sales, marketing, and customer service. Is any of that in your curriculum now? No. Those things are all extremely important to building business. So start viewing things in your curriculum and see if you can apply those to any of these areas. Personal development. I told you I grew up in that crappy town of Utica, and I was kind of a jerk. It took me a while to realize that building business, you have to have a certain rapport with patients and people. You know, people like to do business with people they like, so you have to become likable. Just like most things in life, if you practice it, learn about it, and then apply it, you get better at it. So I actually had to train myself to be a better person. It sounds weird and, you know, smiley and all that fuzzy stuff, but it's true. Nobody's going to want to come back, or more importantly, send their friends to you if they didn't have a great experience, and there's certain qualities that all humans respond well to, okay? So the book that teaches you about human behavior and how to interact with people and how to make sure that the experience they have with you as a one-on-one individual is awesome is this book, Dale Carnegie, How to Win Friends and Influence People. They got an up-to-date version, how to win friends and influence people in the digital age. But honestly, it's the same crap, just now that they say most people are online, you should connect with them on Facebook. But the foundation, the principles haven't changed. This book sold, it's one of the highest selling books of all time for a good reason. And I think that it's a book that I come back to at least once a year. I try to do it every January, and it kind of grounds me into how to treat people the best way possible. It sounds simple to say, but there's a lot of examples in there that are small that make a huge difference. Actually, who's read this book here? Wow, all right, that's good. I'm glad a few people have. If I had a kid who was like in junior high, maybe high school, I'd give them this book. I think it should be taught much earlier on than trying to find out on your own about it at age 25. Here's another personal development book. Who's read this book? One person? That's it? I wish I read this book earlier. This is the foundation of The Secret. And without getting too much of what The Secret is, it's basically you become what you think. And that's basically how to sum it up. There's also key points in there and steps along the way how to develop certain areas of that. But it's a book that you read once. It changes a little bit about you enough where you think it's a super important book and you'll come back to it in life. All right, professional development. There's going to be 2 books tonight that I want everybody to get. And if you can't afford it because you're a broke student, let me know, I'll buy them for you. Because they're 2 books that have been the most important books that I've ever read in my life. And the first book is, not that one, this one. 201 Secrets of a High Performance Optometric Practice. And Dana, if you guys do anything with gifts to graduating students, if you can get this book for them, it'd be a huge, huge, huge win for the whole industry. Bob Lavoie is a dude that's been around for a minute. I came across Bob Lavoie from that other book, but I Googled his name, and I got stuff from the 60s. What's the title of this book? The $100,000 Practices and How to Build It. All you gotta do, who wants a $100,000 practice? Maybe a month, right? I'll take one of $100,000 a month. But the point of this book is, there's certain things you do in your practice that will build your business. And that hasn't changed. People are people. Take the $100,000 practice and add a 0 onto it, and that's you come up with this book. Another 40 years worth of experience on top of that book that was already extremely critical at building great practices, and you have this book. It was out of print for a minute, and people were selling on eBay for 160 bucks, and I didn't hesitate to tell anybody to buy that book. It's 40 bucks now on Amazon. Everybody should go home tomorrow or tonight and buy that book. What you learn out of that book is so key and so crucial to building rapport with patients, to developing a great business sense, to understanding how all the parts fit together. You'll never get that unless you shadowed somebody who was good at it for like 10 years. It's honestly one of the books that I can flip open to any page, and see the best aspects of what I do manifested on paper. This book you guys probably don't need. Remember how I didn't like to do things their way in school? One of the things that used to trip me up was just doing a refraction. They made it so damn complicated. By the time I was done, my stupid little eye that they gave us was, I'd always have the wrong reading on. People don't respond to that, and believe it or not, if you give me a good case history, current pair of glasses, I don't even need to do a subjective or an objective. And this book tells you that. So there's guidelines and pros that you should recognize when somebody comes in with a problem that you think about even before you do anything with an autorefractor or sit them down for a subjective. And that saved me a lot of remakes. I don't do remakes anymore. The only remakes I have are the crazy engineers who are like off 2 degrees on a 0.75 sill that they're always going to be unhappy. But that book saved me a lot of money, and it may not be for everybody. That's why I don't include it as essential, but it made a huge difference in my life. Take advantage of corporate-sponsored stuff. I know Siba Essler put together this program called the First Practice Academy. It's for people who've been in the business for only 1 to 3 years, maybe 5 years tops. So they throw you into a group with people all going through the same struggles, and you bang out your issues together. And the cumulative knowledge of those groups have been kind of distilled and put to word with this book right here. You can't buy it, but I scanned it and I have a PDF, so if anybody wants it, I don't know how legal it is to do it, but shoot me an email. Customer service. If you run a business, customer service is everything. You have to learn how to be the best at it. This is the second of the 2 essential books. The first one's Bob Lavoie, the second one's Jeffrey Gitomer. This book has been our customer service training manual for every person that's ever been an employee at my office, from doctor to optician, and everybody in between. This book, it's hard to describe how important it's been in my office because everything that we do seems to come back to this. Anytime there's a conflict resolution, anytime we're trying to create word of mouth, even little stuff and creativity stems from this book. It's a quick read. You can honestly get through it in a day if you wanted to, but it's one of those things where if you broke out every little paragraph, you can spend probably a 45-minute lecture on it with the knowledge that's in there. So Jeffrey Gitomer, Customer Satisfaction is Worthless, Customer Loyalty is Priceless, has been by far the best customer service book that I've ever encountered. Sales. What do they teach you guys about selling in school? Nothing. What do you think you have to do to get a patient to be compliant with your treatment program? You have to sell them first on you. You have to sell them on your level of expertise. You have to sell them on your level of skill to deal with their problem. You have to sell them on trust. You have to know sales. You can call it what you want. When it comes down to it, you're a salesperson. So, the little red book of selling is something that my salespeople get that do optical sales, but it's also something that doctors should read too. To understand how to overcome objectives that patients have is a salesman mentality. This book will help you develop that mentality. Again, if you look by who it's by Gitomer. That guy's a smart guy. He knows, he gets things. He understands people. The other person that understands people is a book about psychology. And I don't know how I ended up on this book, but there's a couple of key points in this book that have been a core. It's called Influence, the psychology of persuasion. The key things that I got out of this are how to get people to think that it was their idea in the first place and then a reason for them to do it. That helps tremendously when you're trying to motivate staff to do something. The other thing that I got out of this book is social proof. Does anybody know what social proof is? So if I had white headphones and I'm sitting on the subway, what would you assume? You would assume that I would have some kind of Apple product, right? So if I'm sitting on the subway and I see 10 people with these white headphones, I'm automatically assuming that Apple must be putting out some pretty good products because I see it everywhere. You can use that to your advantage. It's a basic human characteristic that if we see a lot of people doing something, we think that's good. When you walk by a restaurant, if it's a Friday night and there's nobody in there, it could be a 5-star restaurant, but since nobody's in there, you're not going to take a chance on it. The burger joint that's busting out the seams with a 20-minute wait may not be as good, but because it's popular, you think it's better. Those are the kind of things that you'll learn by reading this book. Okay, let's talk about marketing. When I think of marketing, there's a few things that I think of. One is branding. You know, picking something, a feel to it, a look to it, and McDonald's does a great job of that. And then marketing, getting your name out there. They don't teach you this stuff in school, so you got to pick up that knowledge on your own. The foundation of getting good marketing is creativity. Creativity is a skill. Creativity is not something you're born with. You may have it, but it needs to be developed. If you can learn stuff, one of the things you can learn is creativity and how to be more creative. You know, creativity is something that the average optometrist isn't going to put a QR code that makes an appointment on a poker chip saying, don't gamble with your eyes, book an appointment, and flip it to the patient on their way out. You know, creativity is not going to be something where I have a lip balm sitting on my front desk in the middle of winter when people's lips are all cracked up saying, here's a lip balm for your lips. It's got my logo on it. People pull this out in public, it gets passed around, they're like, oh, who is that? What is that? It's creative stuff like that. You got to start thinking outside the box, and this book, it just totally shatters the box. So it's called Thinker Toys. Word of mouth. Who thinks word of mouth is the best way to build business? Everybody should. Word of mouth is definitely the best way to build business because the people coming to you from that referral already like you. As long as you don't screw it up, you're good. So if you can build business on word of mouth, you're going to build faster, you're going to build deeper and more loyal, and it's going to take off. To build word of mouth, it's another thing that you have to learn about, study, implement, and apply on a daily basis. So there are a lot of things you can pick up by having somebody point out successful word of mouth strategies, campaigns, and techniques. This book you can't actually buy. You have to know somebody who has it. So you know me. Ask me for this book, and I'll get it to you. It has a lot of important information in there. Okay, let's see where we're going with this. You know what? There's like a whole nother lecture, but I'm getting tired of being up here. I'd rather just open it up and answer questions at this point in time. What questions, concerns, what issues do you think you might have? What do you want to know about? What did I cover that you're like, no, that's not true? What do you want to know? Let me know.
You said you were like literally a rock star, I guess, in the city when you were done. How did you manage debt? Like, what was your approach to that? You got
I forgot about that.
Okay.
Honestly, you guys are in a different position than me. I came out with under 100 grand in debt. I think I paid 3.8%. I don't worry about it. You guys are screwed. 200,000 with 7.8%, right? Something like that. You're going to have to do a much better job. So your question is very valid, and I don't have an answer for you because it's not something that was on my lap. I can tell you, though, that if you consolidate and break it down into manageable payments and include that into your budget as a fixed expense, and you're aware of that, then, you know, take 20 years to pay it off. It's not a big deal. You're going to be making money the rest of your life. So pay it off as you go. Don't worry about being too bogged down with it from the start. And don't let it hold you back on acquiring money for a business. Actually ignore it. And don't bring it up as a point, by the way, when you're applying for money. Yeah.
What do you say to patients that want to buy their glasses online?
They want to buy them online. Why do you want to buy your glasses online? It's cheaper? Yeah, so we make it known that if they've had glasses purchased there before, one of the measurements they're going to need is their PD. The other thing that you're going to find is that you're going to need those glasses adjusted, cared for, maintained, and you're going to want the skills of an optician to do that. We have an eyewear service plan that you can take advantage of if that's something you want to do. But if people are looking online, we also want you to first consider to see what we have here because you may love it even better. But we don't make a huge deal about it right now because if you do that, you just look like a jerk. But it's something that you're going to have to do and have to be aware of and have to compete with. The biggest thing that you can do is to keep people in your office and capture the sale before they even have a chance to go consider shopping elsewhere. So you have to create the buying environment. Nobody wants to be in an office that doesn't feel comfortable. You know, to get somebody to separate from their cash and their wallet, you have to have the right atmosphere. So learning about things that you have to put in place in your office environment is extremely important. You know, you want your office to sound good. You want your office to smell good. You want your office to look good. You want your staff to be friendly and personable. You want to be likable. If you can create a friendship with somebody and establish rapport, the chances of them buying something there that day are extremely high. So you have to do more things to capture it on the spot then, because if people are going to go elsewhere, then you already have a missed opportunity. It's a good question. Yeah.
How would you handle, let's say, they bought frames from you and then they went and found them online cheaper and they came back to you about it?
How would you handle somebody who bought frames from you and then their friend's like, how much you pay for those? $350? I got them for $179 at 1-800-Glasses. How would I handle that? One of the things that I do is when a frame rep comes in, I Google his frame line. If I Google his frame line and it's sold online for $5 more than I paid for it, tell them to get the hell out. So frame lines have to be aware of where their product ends up and in what distribution channels it ends up, because smart business owners aren't going to play that game anymore. I mean, I feel like a jerk if that was true, and I don't want to feel that way, and I don't want patients and customers to feel that way either. So I think that if you're going to carry those lines, you have to be well aware of what it's going for wherever. So you can avoid it totally by not carrying those lines. Anybody else? Yep.
I heard you talk about the secret terms. I don't know if anyone remembers that, but can you explain a little bit? And when did you experience that, and how, if in any way, did that influence your business?
So The Secret.
Yeah.
I don't know. I heard about it on Oprah. Never read it. Never saw the movie. I just know about it. That's it. So I don't have any experience with The Secret, but from what I've been told, Earl Nightingale, Napoleon Hill, Dale Carnegie, all those guys who did personal development back 100 years ago, nothing's really changed, and those are the foundation, and that's the core. Maybe someday I'll get to The Secret, but I use that word because people understand what that means. But I haven't had any experience with that subset of that. And when did that change occur? It happened when I started my business and I realized I didn't have any of the skill sets that I needed. Yeah.
When you're hiring staff members, like opticians, do you go for experience or do you like the trainer?
It's a great question. Hiring and staffing is it's always a huge pain in the ass. If you ask any business owner what their biggest pain in the ass is, it's usually finding great employees. You know, no one's going to work it like you. No one's invested as much as you, so no one's really going to... It's rare to find somebody who works like they own it. I mean, I did when I was working for Cohen's, but it's rare. And I think one of the things that I struggle with is trying to find people like that, and when they don't live up, I usually fire them and move on. I have a lot of turnover because I don't know. The way I have it set up is we have so many protocols and guidelines, I can hire anybody and within a week they're up and running, right? But to find somebody who's good to great is a challenge. And I'm always willing to sacrifice good for great because there's always a supply of good people. At least in New York there is. It may be tough. But with unemployment rates everywhere in double digits, it shouldn't be that hard to find good. So the original question is, do I hire personality and train skills, or do I hire skills and train personality? You can't train personality, but you can improve it. And you really can't train core skills in sales. They have to have it already. So they have to be a salesperson by nature. So I always answer that question with a no. And people are like, no to what? Just no to both of those. I want to find a combination of somebody who knows, if the job's for optical sales, I want to find a combination of somebody who's got foundational knowledge, who can sell whatever just because they're a salesperson, and then somebody who fits into the culture of our office. So it's a combination of all the above, I think. But you improve each of those equally. Somebody may have a stronger proficiency in one of those areas, but they have to all be there. I'm not a fan of going into a jewelry shop and pulling out a top salesperson because they're an inherently good salesperson. I think they need some kind of optical experience. Anything else? Yep.
Your eye exams, how long are they? Do you shorter eye exams to get more people, or longer eye exams?
It's a good question. How long are the eye exams, and should we see more people and have shorter eye exams? We schedule 2 comprehensive exams an hour, but I'm thinking about switching that to 20 minutes. Now, my office is a small office. We don't have a lot of techs doing a lot of the work. We have a lot of doctor time. So if you're there for an exam, you probably spend 15, 20 minutes with me out of that 30 minutes. That works for us. Will it work for us continued into the future? I'm not sure. We're currently reassessing things, and we may end up running 20-minute exams and bringing in additional tech to do certain aspects of the exam. That's something that you're going to have to find what works best for creating great encounters for the patient and also gonna, keep the lights on. So that's something that you have to adjust. Yeah.
How long are they there from walking in the door to walking out the door?
Depends. We serve beer, so some people will linger for a couple drinks. But typically, most people are there about an hour and 20 minutes. Yeah.
Why did you find existing practice that was shitty?
That's usually one of the first questions people give me. Why didn't you buy a practice when there's so many practices out there? Because the practices out there for sale suck a lot of times, and I hate fixing other people's problems. I'd rather make my own mistakes and fix my own problems than have to go at it from somebody else's. Good question. Yep.
I was going to ask how you get patients in, but if you have beer, it's probably a good check. But other than that, how do you get like new patients? Like if you're going to switch to 20 minutes?
Yeah. The first thing when we opened up cold, being on VSP helped a lot, and I think that VSP is so common that if you're on the VSP provider list, you're in their neighborhood, and you have decent reviews, then you'll be the win. You'll be the draw. So being on a popular insurance panel helps. What furthers that is just the experience you provide people, and then allowing that experience to get out there in the public. So, basically, before people would tell their friends, but now they have the opportunity to tell the public when you broadcast these messages through social media. And we do that. We're super heavy on Yelp and Facebook. Questions? Yeah.
What were your qualifications for location?
Originally, it was foot traffic, because if I had the visibility of the neighborhood, I could start to get people in.
But you're from New York, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
So in Brooklyn, there's in my neighborhood, there's 5th Avenue, which is the commercial street, and 7th Avenue, which is a commercial street, and then little offshoots. I wanted to be on 5th, but for $7,000 for 400 square foot, it wasn't going to work for me. I know I would be sunk right from the start. So I went a little bit bigger, a little bit off the beaten path, but it actually was a beaten path because of the subway. And it worked out well. So I did have initial visibility in the neighborhood, and combined the fact that we had visibility through people's insurance panels, we got people in the door. Once people got in the door, we were able to build our business through word of mouth and get the word out through our online presence.
So you weren't selective on a type of patient, like an elderly population versus a younger population?
No, I was. That's what I did the research online for. I wanted young professionals.
Wait, young?
Young professionals. Why? Because they had usually good insurance benefits, and they had disposable incomes, and they got kids. So you get them in for their kid, you get the mom, and then dad will eventually come in, and then all their brothers and sisters, they pop out in the future. And one of the things that we do is, my office is a community space, so I got an AV set up, I got a projector, PA system, I bought 50 chairs, and I donate my office to mommy groups, to business groups, and networking groups. People come in there a couple times a month, and they use the space as a meeting space.
But doesn't Medicare pay you the most back?
I don't have Medicare patients. I think we saw 24 last year.
But isn't
I hate
your
old
return
people.
the highest?
I just don't like them. We'll get there. We'll all get there together. We'll get there all together. That's why I wanted it to mirror me, because as you get older, your patient base gets older. But I don't want to start with old people, because then I'd be stuck with them forever. I'd rather start young and get them together. Yeah.
Yeah, this transitions. One of my pet peeves right now is understanding the insurance matrix and pricing. In a nutshell, I think it's the most important takeaway. How do people evaluate their open and cold with proper insurance panels, not only for their area, but to remain in business? Because I've seen some practices go under because of all the insurances they took.
It's a good question. How do you know which insurance panels to pick? Look at what type of people are on the insurance panels and see if that's a good fit for your practice and if that's the people you want in your practice. When we opened up, we took VSP, IMED, and UFT, and I can tell you UFT doesn't pay crap. I think you get $100 and everything else you have to write off. But I love teachers, and I have a long history of teachers, and teachers have been instrumental in building our practice. Next Saturday, I'm doing cow eyeball dissection at PS 107. The following Monday, I'm doing a brown bag lunch series at Cobble Hill PS 32. I get in the door by having patients as teachers as patients. once you get a teacher, you get like the class, and then you get their whole family. So teachers are wonderful. I take that one unquestionably. VSP, we talked about, that's one of those staples that we take. And IMED was a similar patient base, which actually I'm currently not on IMED. We're just VSP and UFT right now. Get on every single medical panel that you can, because when we're on every single medical panel, their exam is covered for their copay. They pay a refraction fee, and if they're doing contacts, they pay a contact lens exam service fee too. But people want to know that their benefits are being used. They don't care like exactly what it is. It could be the cheapest, crappiest plan ever, but they want to use it because that's what they're entitled to. So you have to play into that entitlement. And being on every medical panel is extremely beneficial. And 4 years, I'm still waiting to gain access to a couple of the ones that I want to be on. So start early. Try to start and apply for panel access the second you form your business and pick your location, because it can take a while. Good question.
You found that it's hard to get certain medical insurances to pay back because you're an optometrist, especially in New York and I think in Florida. That would probably be a problem for like certain, like OCT. I don't know if you have that.
Yeah. So an OD and an OMD have different reimbursements for different provider panels. I've never been blocked on reimbursement. I've been blocked on panels that, for example, GHI wants me to take Davis Vision to get on their medical panel. Davis Vision is not something that I wanted to take, so then I find myself having to fight with them for years trying to get on the medical panel as a medical provider because I'm an OD, and ODs should provide vision care services. So you're not necessarily blocked as far as getting reimbursement, but they may block you entirely from a panel unless you have play by their rules. So where I stand with that is, I don't know. I really want to be on GHI because I see a lot of my patients coming in with that insurance. I may have to jump on the vision plan for a minute and then drop it after I get on, but we'll see. That's a question where I don't know because it probably varies state to state, but in New York it's not that bad as it is in Florida, I guess. Yeah?
For your particular practice, like how do you deal with outside referrals and stuff like that? Do you have like relationships with entities?
I take, the question is how do I deal with outside referrals? I take a little bit different take on that. Healthcare professionals, we try to build strong relationships. My OMD referral rate is extremely low. I have SUNY 2 minutes away, you know, a quick trip on the train. So I refer a lot to optometrists when I can refer to an optometrist. An optometrist has the skill set, the equipment, and the level of care is equal. Why would I want to refer to an ophthalmologist when I can keep it and benefit optometry? So I do a lot of OD to OD referrals. But yeah, I haven't sent SUNY. I don't know. SUNY gets a lot of cases from me for many different reasons. I think that helping the students is wonderful, but I also think that having optometric care do things that patients previously thought they had to go see a specialist to is pretty powerful as well. I mean, you guys are coming out of school trained the best training around. You can do everything except surgery, right? So refer to each other. If it's not something you do, refer to another optometrist that does it. Questions? Any? Thank you. It's my pleasure, guys. I'm really easy to get a hold of, and I love hearing back from you guys, and I love answering questions, so just shoot me an email. Thank you.
Kind of break for the evening. I did find the key to speak a little bit more fluidly, easier. It's missing, but it was in here. Anyway, well, it took a full glass for me. It only took about a half glass for him, so I needed to practice a little bit. Anyway, we have some, and very importantly, extra drink tickets.